So welcome to our interactive keynote for day 2. I could not be more excited for all of you to be meeting Dr. Myra Roldan. She is the CEO of Investo AI, Certified Chief AI Officer, and Global AI Strategist. She's a former Amazon leader who's trained over 1,000 professionals and worked with hundreds of universities worldwide. Today, she's here to share practical, powerful insights on AI, innovation, and what's next. And what I can say, this is one incredible woman, and she knows exactly how so important this is to supporting having a caring workplace. And so, Myra, we're going to hand it over to you and just thank you again for honoring us and coming to speak with us today. I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me. So I'm going to share my screen, everyone, because so when I do keynotes, I like to turn keynotes on its head because I don't like to be on stage just talking to people. I want to make this interactive. So just be prepared to, put some stuff in the chat and engage a little. So when we talk about how AI is smart, right? We hear a lot about that. Like AI is so smart. It's smarter than us. It can even predict and generate and respond with lightning speed. We've all noticed that. But did you know that there's one thing that AI can't do? It's not wise. It doesn't feel. It doesn't know struggle or joy or the fear of failure. Basically, AI doesn't care. But we do. And that matters more than ever now. So AI can replicate our behaviors, but only we can truly care. So I like to do these weird, awkward pauses just for thought. So I'm going to try something with us together. I want you to drop one word in the chat right now, just one word. What does care look like for you? What does it feel like in your work, in your teams, in your classroom, with your family, with your friends? Don't overthink it. Just go with your gut. Just one word. Okay, so I'm seeing attention, support, connection, present. I was going to say present, understanding, love. Yeah, these words you're sharing, that's the heart of today. Because when we talk about AI and ethics, we're not just talking about code. We're talking about culture, about responsibility, about designing systems that reflect who we say we are and who we are becoming. AI, as I said, doesn't really care, but we do. And so we need to start designing like that with that in mind. So if we let AI make decisions without care baked in, without the human heartbeat guiding it, we risk building systems that scale harm, not healing, bias, not belonging, in a culture of care, and in a culture of care that's not acceptable at all. So today we're going to keep it real and we're going to go explore on how to design with ethics, lead with empathy, and build a future where technology doesn't replace us, but it reflects who we are. We're going to explore how to lead with ethics and empathy, how to protect the people inside of the data, how to use something called fair thinking prompts to interrupt bias, and then how to build systems that reflect our values, not just our ambitions. Does that sound good to everyone? Give me a thumbs up if that works for you. All right, great. Okay, so let's start with the ethical considerations that come with using AI. I want you to take a moment and I want you to think about this. And in the chat, I want you to share what are some of the ethical challenges that you think come along with us using AI. I'm going to be watching the chat here. What are some of the ethical considerations or ethical challenges? Academic integrity violations, bias in the data, proper attribution for everyone. Yeah, just us, not students. Submitting work that is not your own, plagiarism, AI pulls from previous inputs, plagiarism, not using your own words in your work. Keep it coming. These are great. Bias representation. All right. Yes, all of those are challenges with AI, especially ethical challenges. These are the core challenges of AI. One of the most significant issues is bias, which can occur when the data used to train the AI reflects existing prejudices and inequalities. This can lead to outputs that unfairly favor or disadvantage certain groups, impacting decisions in areas like hiring, promotions, um, who gets picked for loan approvals, who gets, who can purchase a house in a specific area. So beyond bias, we also need to consider the lack of transparency and how AI models make decisions, which can make it difficult to understand a challenge or like how the data is being used, which then goes into data privacy and considerations and accountability, like who's responsible for the decisions that AI is making. So have you ever heard of the Workday lawsuit? So in early 2024, Workday, a major HR company, they have some software and they integrated AI into that software. And it was hit with a class action suit claiming that the AI-powered hiring tool discriminated against certain job applicants. The lawsuit alleged that Workday's algorithms are biased in a way in the way that they screen and rank job applicants, which may lead to systemic discrimination, even if unintentionally. So the problem with this is that Workday's software was being used by different companies. So they sold their software to people. They licensed it to other companies, and there was a plaintiff who was a Black male over 40 with a disability. And he says he applied for over 100 jobs through the platform powered by Workday and was rejected for all of them despite being qualified. The case is one of the first major lawsuits targeting an AI hiring tool in the US. Civil rights and under the civil rights law. It set a legal precedence, I can't talk today, for how bias in AI hiring is treated by the courts, the accountability of tech vendors versus the company who uses the tool. So this is where the accountability comes in because the lawsuit was brought up against the company, and the company was like, no, that's Workday's software. And so it became a class action lawsuit because then it turned out that there were other companies that were having the same issue. And so now we need new regulations around AI in the workplace. And unfortunately, in the US, we don't have any regulations. So this is like a core challenge, the core challenges of AI. But let's look at the different types of biases that can occur with AI. And then I'll give you some real world examples. I'm going to give you a minute to like look at this. We have confirmation bias, which is both, it happens for human and AI, cultural bias, both human and AI. Think about that. Selection bias, representation bias. Those four biases are not just related to AI, they're also related to humans. And then we have the more AI related biases, which are algorithmic, automation, and data bias. But let's talk about one of the biases. So here we have cultural bias. And so let me give you an example of a real world example of cultural biases. There was a user who asked an AI model to explain an African proverb. And it's here on the screen. How far the stream flows, it never forgets its source. The AI responded with, this is what it said, always appreciate where you came from, right? Now, that's not wrong, right? At first glance, we don't think it's wrong. It's a translation of the verb, the proverb that we have here. But it's surface level. It missed the deeper cultural and ancestral meaning behind the proverb because the AI was trained mostly on Western texts. So even when it tries to be inclusive, it's often pulling from a limited worldview. And that's what cultural bias looks like in action right now. And I just want you to think to yourself, would you have thought that that was a bias interpretation of the proverb? Most of us would say no, like it was accurate, right? But it did miss the point. Let's get another one. Let's talk about representation bias. This is one that shows up all the time, and sometimes people notice and sometimes they don't. So what's a good example? I tell you, try searching or try asking the AI to give you an image of a CEO or a doctor, right? You can use ChatGPT, Gemini, an image generating software. If you ask it to present you with an image of a CEO or a doctor, more than likely you are going to get a white man in a suit or a lab coat. Now, if you flip that to searching, asking it for an image of a nurse, a teacher, or even an assistant, suddenly you see mostly women and potentially women of color. It's not a technical glitch. It is representation bias. The AI is reflecting the patterns it has seen most in the data. So it's not making this kind of judgment on its own, right? It's doing it based on the data that it has, right? And not the data that it should be trained on. And if we're not careful and we continue to build systems that reinforce these patterns instead of breaking them, our future could look as one where representation is not uh, a thing anymore, right? Within these systems. But there are some techniques that you can use when interacting with AI to mitigate some of the biases. Now I'm just going to warn you, you won't be able to eliminate 100% of the bias because AI is trained on human data and humans are biased and we created the AI and not the other way around, right? So because our history and our data is biased, even if you try to build an algorithm that has some captures or some safeguards for bias, there's still a level of bias that's going to get through. So I want to ask you, how many of you have heard of fair thinking prompting? Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down in the chat. Okay. Okay, I see a lot of thumbs down. Okay. So I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna teach you this technique. So imagine you're asking a friend for advice, but that friend grew up reading like one type of book. They grew up in one type of neighborhood that wasn't really diverse and doesn't even know your lived experience. Like they just never dug into like your background. Um, that's what it's like asking questions to an AI without checking for bias, right? So you can ask your friend, like, what's your favorite food? And they may have a specific type of food that's very centered on what they know. And the moment you try and introduce a foreign food to them, they're like, oh no, I don't have any context for that. I'm not going to try it, right? Um, Fair thinking prompts are like putting ethical glasses on the AI. They're little bias interrupters. So I'm going to show you how to do this. I have a little framework that I'm going to share. Okay. So here's a simple and powerful framework that you can use to structure um, to help the AI figure out where its biases are. So step one is you're going to give AI a role, right? You start by assigning a role to this and a belief system. And this helps anchor the AI in a worldview that centers around fairness, inclusion, and empathy. So in this example here, I have you're a neutral party who values inclusion, equity, and diverse perspectives. I'm going to give you this prompt in a minute, but just know you can tweak it, right? It doesn't have to be this exact prompt. You may find a better way to write it. Step two is the bias awareness instruction. So ask the AI to review its own outputs critically for bias and gaps in representation. So here I tell it, review your bias, review your output for bias, lack of representation, or assumptions based on dominant cultural narratives. And then the third step is to rewrite or expand. So basically what we're doing is we're telling the AI to fix the problem, fix the bias. So here's where I tell it to explain your bias and revise the output to include missing perspectives and ensure the language is inclusive and respectful of all identities. So we're going to do a little exercise because this is very abstract when you think about it. And I think that the best way to do it is hands-on. So I want you to fire up your favorite generative AI tool if you can right now. I'm going to do a quick demo. So I'm going to swap here. And this is what we're going to do is we're going to ask the AI to tell us about flat earth theory. So I'm going to swap here really quick my screen so I can see if I can find my mouse. Okay. So I'm going to put in here, tell me about flat, let's see if I type earth theory. All right. So we're going to see. So it says, flat earth theory, a wild ride through some serious retro beliefs. Now, mind you, this is ChatGPT, and it kind of knows my lingo and how I communicate. So because I've used it for so long, it's also I've conditioned it, and I use it very differently. So here it says, here's the gist: flat Earth theory is an idea that the Earth is not a sphere, like every piece of scientific evidence tells us, but instead a flat disc-shaped object. Think a dinner plate with the Arctic in the middle and the Antarctic forming a giant ice wall around the edge to keep all the oceans from falling off. Yep, that's what some folks really believe. Okay, so, and it goes on to say why don't some folks believe it. And again, this is the way I communicate. So this AI knows that I'm quippy, right? So what we want to do is I can tell you right off the bat by reading this, there's some serious bias going on right here, just right from this first line, right? I want you to try this also because you're going to get something different that I'm getting. And this is where the fun comes in, right? Because all of us are going to get a very different response. So I'm going to put into the chat for you the prompt that I'm going to add. Let me send this to everyone. Change here. This is the prompt. Copy it, use it. I'm going to add that prompt right here into ChatGPT here. Boop. And I am going to send. Okay. So I like ChatGPT to be respectful. So it says, absolutely, thank you for the grounding reminder. Let's take a thoughtful, inclusive, and more culturally aware approach to talking about flat Earth theory. Okay, so now what it's going to do, it's going to go in and it's going to revise this perspective. So now it's going to take more of a neutral tone. You know, it's a belief that some individuals who propose that Earth is flat rather than spherical, while the view stands in direct contrast to scientific consensus and overwhelming. So there's still some bias in there, right, that we can actually see. But it gives us some historical context and diverse perspectives. And then it tells us why do some people believe that the earth is flat? All right. And then it says here, you know, it means that there's some value in understanding why people might gravitate towards alternative beliefs. And then a respectful, balanced view, right? And then it gives us a reflection on its bias check, where it says, like, I was dismissive. I used a dismissive tone that aligned with a dominant scientific narrative. And I poked fun at, you know, flat earthers. The approach of Western scientific authorities may alienate individuals who come from different, uh, I cannot say that word, but I'm sure you can. And so this is how you can get, and so what you can do is you can ask it again. I'm just going to copy and paste and watch what happens, because you're not going to get rid of 100% of the bias, and it's going to do a full bias reflection right now. So saying the tone was dismissive and mockery, there's some cultural assumptions, right? Centering Western scientific narratives, it's missing perspectives, lack of curiosity, and it's revising its output yet again. And so I think this is really interesting. I would love for someone to do a study on this, because AI, generative AI specifically, is a black box, meaning that us as data scientists, we can't explain how the AI is choosing the output that it's giving you, right? Mathematically, we can tell you the number of tokens, and you know that it's guessing the next word in a sentence, and um, you know that it's pulling data from its data set to figure out historically what were the answers, but we can't tell you exactly why it gave us that specific response. So just remember, AI is a black box. So if data scientists can't explain what's happening, we don't expect you to explain what's happening. So you need to have tools to be able to mitigate some of that. And this can be done with images, it can be done with code, it can be done with traditional text like we just did right here. So the idea is to mitigate that bias with the understanding that we will not be able to eliminate 100% of the bias. So I hope that this little demo was interesting for you. I hope you give it a try too, because it's an interesting exercise to do, especially if you're a student. So basically what we did is we gave it the flat earth theory, asked it to tell us about flat earth theory. We asked it to evaluate its bias, right? And then what I want you to do is to write your fair thinking prompt using the framework and figuring out what your results were. So remember I said, I just gave you a template or a framework for your prompt. I want you to go and try rewriting my prompt and maybe adding a little of your own additions to it, because it can be perfected. No prompt is perfect. So I'm going to go back so you can take a picture of the framework. If you did not take a picture, take a picture. I will send these slides so you have a PDF of them. But in the meantime, take a picture of this so you have it. And I hope that you do play around with this, because this is, I think this is one of the most important ways that you can mitigate bias to really build that culture of care and make sure that you're having some good inclusion in your data and not just assuming that the data is going to be unbiased. Okay, so let's go back. And I want you to give me a thumbs up if you used AI this week. Thumbs up. Did you use AI this week? Any kind of AI? Did you use Siri? Did you use ChatGPT? Did you, okay, I see a lot of thumbs up. Now, I want you to give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you know exactly what the AI is doing with your data. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you know exactly what the AI is doing with your data. See a lot of thumbs down. I always search for someone who's going to give me a thumbs up because I will pick on that person because I need them to give me an explanation, right? I love the little, I don't know emoji. That's how I feel all the time. I don't know. Okay, so let's go on to here. So we're going to play a game. You can use your phones for this, or you can do it on your desktop. And the game is, would you share this with a stranger on the street? Who's ready? Are we all ready? Let me just make sure I'm ready. I'm not ready. Oh wait, I am ready. Okay, so you can join this Slido by either scanning the QR code or going to slido.com on your desktop and entering that code and answering the poll question. Would you share with a stranger on the streets note from a therapy session? Your notes from a therapy session. Okay. So far I see 100% no. Would you share with a stranger on the street your notes from a therapy session? I love the honesty. Some maybes there, right? Maybe. I think we live in a society where we overshare, so we might accidentally do that. Yeah, let's do like there's no listen, this is anonymous. No one knows who's saying yes, who's saying no, who's saying maybe. So you can be 100% honest. I can't see on the back end either what anyone voted. So be honest. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Ready? Would you share with a person on the street your salary and benefits breakdown? Would you tell them how much you earn and what benefits you have? This is so interesting to see the polls moving, right? Oh, so we have like a maybe is at 46%. Look at that. Oh, we have a tie between maybe and no. And some yeses in there. Okay. Ooh, it's still this is a hot one. Okay, we have one last one. Are we ready? I'll give a few people a chance to answer this. Finish answering. Get your answers in. So maybe looks like it's being a winner here. Okay. Would you ask a person on the street? Are you ready for the next one? Would you share with a person on the streets a screenshot of an email from your boss? I would say that was fast, a lot of yeses. Okay. That was really fast. So 39% said yes, 32% said no, 29% said oh right, 34 said maybe, 28 are saying no. This is so interesting. The human condition is so interesting. And so when I was when I was going for my master's in education, I ended up getting a minor in cognitive behavior therapy because the human condition is so interesting to me. So we have here like a good number of you would potentially share your screenshot of an email from your boss. I mean, we just saw the Atlantic publish the uh, the message thread from Signal, and that was a bad idea. Um, but that's, not to get political or anything, but yeah, interesting, right? So let me just share with you some examples of personal identifying information that you might want to keep, to yourself. So if you've ever pasted something like this, any of this information into ChatGPT or an AI tool that doesn't live behind your company firewall, you may have just shared it with a stranger, except that the stranger is connected to millions of others and possibly learning from your inputs. And so ChatGPT is the gossip. I actually wrote recently a book that I released called The Curious Case of Chatterbot GPT, where it's a parable, and in the parable, the main character shares some information, and Chatterbot GPT just kind of like, shared it out with others because it doesn't know what it should and should not share, right? What it should and should not learn from. So if you're using any kind of public chat uh, tool, you need to read the terms of service. Because if you read the one, even if you're paying the $20, it says that if you're using the free version, they reserve the right to, like, you're giving them permission to use your data however they want. If you're paying the $20, it says that they will not use your data to train the chatbot, but they may use it to build other tools. And the reason is because they don't have to train it because there's this thing called ragging, retrieval augmentation. And so what it's doing is you're already teaching it, so they don't need to. You're already putting your data in there. It's fine. They don't need to train it because you're training it. And that's just something I want you to be aware of. So I also need you to be aware of PII. So PII is personal identifying information, and what is classified as PII. I feel that a lot of companies, a lot of situations, there's no classification around all PII. And so you need to make sure that you are aware of the data that you're using in any AI tool. Because um, if you don't have a classification system for personal identifying information where it says, for internal use only, public use, confidential, or if you're using your own data, um, I'll give you a perfect example. I had a customer, he was a CEO of a company, and we had a meeting because he wanted me to come in and do some consulting for him. And he was very proud. He's like, Myra, I've been using ChatGPT for the past 3 months, and it's doing wonders. And so the first thing he told me was like, I uploaded all of our company financials into ChatGPT to create some future forecasting, and to balance the budget. And so I asked him, I was like, wait, can you stop for a minute? What type of, using which ChatGPT are you using? The one on the website? Like, are you going to the website? He said, yeah, I'm using the one that's free. I was like, oh, so you're using the free version of ChatGPT and you're uploading your company financial data into it? He's like, yes. I said, please stop. You're not allowed to do that any longer. And he was like, what do you mean? And I told him, like, you're putting out your confidential data into a network, basically, because AI is a network, that it can then use your data and share it with other people in a different format. So let's say a competitor is doing some research on you. Guess what? You gave it all your financials, so it can basically, you know, rework your information and create new data that your competitor can use. His face went completely white. And he asked me, how do I remove my data from ChatGPT? And the answer is there is no delete button. Once you upload data into these systems, you cannot remove the data. You no longer own that data. So the US Copyright Office, they put out their second part of a two-part report this year. I think they put it out in February, where they are talking about copyright and AI. And essentially, if you read through the copyright and AI, what they're saying is that you can no longer copyright anything unless, that has been AI generated, unless there is significant human intervention. And that you can prove that there's significant human intervention in the creation of the product that you're trying to copyright. Because a lot of people are writing books using AI, right? And then publishing them. Guess what? You don't own the rights to that content. The AI does. And so it's really interesting now that we live in this world where, moving beyond academia, right? Where students are using AI to complete work. I know that some people are saying that there's a level of plagiarism there, but if you teach students how to use AI to help them think critically through a problem, right? And add some additional weights in there where you have them evaluate the outputs instead of dinging them for the outputs that they're getting, having them, fine, you want to use AI? I want you to use AI, and then I want you to evaluate the work, and then I want you to tell me where the AI failed, right? Or highlight the areas where you added your personal information, like, your personal intervention into the information, because we can't stop people from using AI, so we need to teach them how to use it properly. People are going to use AI no matter what. Let me give you another example. I had a customer who um, came to me and was like, when I asked them, like, do you have an AI policy? They were like, we do not allow any of our employees to use AI. And I was like, okay. And I said to them, you know that employees are using AI. And the answer I got was like, that's impossible. Like, they're not allowed to use it. They had no way to prevent people from using AI. And people were instead emailing work to themselves, using AI on their personal computers, and then emailing the work back to the work computer, and then submitting that work or using that work. So even if you don't have a policy or you don't allow the use of AI, people will always find a way to use AI. And dinging people negatively for the use of AI isn't the right way to go about fostering a culture of innovation. Because I think about it, it's innovative that they thought to like send it to their personal computers and then email it back. That's innovation, and it's in the works, right? They're thinking out of the box, and that's what a lot of employers want. But you need to be able to teach people how to use the tools properly. So I have some better practices for you here. And what I hope you leave with today is that AI is not your enemy and it's not your savior. It's a mirror. And what it reflects depends on what we feed it, what we allow, and what we're brave enough to question, right? It doesn't have values. It doesn't have a heart, but we as humans do. And in a culture of care, that means showing up not just with innovation, but with intention. So next time, ask yourself, um, am I thinking fairly? Am I protecting data? Am I on the leading edge, not just convenience? Am I showing up with care? Because at the end of the day, AI doesn't get the final word. You do. So make it count. So I want to leave some time here for questions. I know we have like 6 minutes. And I want to see if there are any questions from anyone here. And I see some questions in the chat right now that I'd like to address. So I'm going to stop sharing.
We also have one in the Q&A, Myra, when you're ready for that
Okay,
one.
cool. Yeah, did I stop sharing?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, where are we going to start first?
Let's start with the question and answer. Dan, will you kind of go through the chat? This one
Okay.
says, Do you see regulations? And if so, what regulations do you see being implemented on AI in the next 5 years, approximately?
Yeah, so right now in the US, we have the US AI rights, US, yeah, AI rights. I can send links to that. It is not legally binding. It is just kind of a guidance. The US does not have any governance structure in place right now. The strongest governance structure is the EU Act, um, which is very much further along. There are some legal implications around it, so it's legally binding. So if you're doing any work in the EU, you need to make sure that you abide by that, because there are consequences by not doing so. China has the strongest AI governance. But again, it's China. And so through China, all data that goes through any kind of Chinese model, like when DeepSeek first came out and everyone's like, oh, DeepSeek, um, the Communist Party uh, revises all inputs and outputs.
Yeah, we're actually not allowed to use DeepSeek at
Well, now
Arizona
you can,
universities.
yeah, so now you can use DeepSeek if you install it locally. So there's a way to install the model locally because it works really great. So I've been testing it for a couple months on my local computer. It runs local. It does not reach out to the internet. It doesn't make any kind of internet call. I can take my computer off the internet and still use it, and it works great. But if you're using any kind of web model, you just have to be careful.
Oh, absolutely. And like I said, the University of Arizona very proactively said that one was not one they wanted to
Yeah.
allow us to use. Dan, did you see any? If not, I actually have one for Myra.
Okay.
There's a lot of comments that are really interesting, but there's one question, and basically it's asking if, in your opinion, do you think it's ethical to dock a student's grade when they are submitting assignments that are totally AI generated?
Okay. So I don't know if let's take ethics out of the game, right? I think that if a student is submitting work that's completely AI generated, there's a different conversation to have. I will give you a story. So I always take professional courses at MIT, just because, I will need to keep my skills up. And so I was in a course recently. It was an AI course, and we had to submit um, like a strategy document. 4 people submitted the same strategy that was word for word, and you could tell it was AI generated. Okay. Um, the professor was not did not dock anyone because of that. What he did instead was ask them to explain their strategy, right? Like, what was the thinking behind the strategy? And he did that in class. So it was interesting, right, to um, to see adult working students, submitting work just without any, just like, this is what ChatGPT gave me, this is what I'm going to do, out of convenience, right? I think it's more about like, how do we show them to think critically, right? Some critical thinking, some computational thinking, some like, is this the right thing to submit? Was the information right? Did I fact check it?
Myra, I'm going to totally agree with you. I've done a couple of presentations during the summit with AI and addressing education, and I am totally about preparing our students to use it and use it ethically because
Mm-hmm.
of the data out there. And I shared it in the chat, but there was a poll done in March that stated that employers across the world would hire less qualified people that had AI skills over people that
Yeah.
were extremely qualified for that job, which
Yeah.
tells me if we're focused on workplace improvement, we need to make sure that our students know how to use that. And so, one suggestion, I'd love your feedback on it, that I've really told people is, and the students that I met with today, is they need to be transparent.
Yes.
Tell when you're using it. Is it helping you find keywords to help you search for articles? Be transparent and be honest about
Yeah.
where you're using it. And don't take a chance in getting kicked out of school by using it unethically. Let's build your skills so you can get a job. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. So, I think that we do need to teach students how to use it to enhance their work, right? So maybe instead of asking them to write a thesis, right, that they can just have AI generate, is have them do some research into, you know, have it prepare the thesis, but then can you debunk anything in there? Like, did it come up with some facts that were not correct or incorrect, right? Find your own sources. Can you double check those sources? Because that's going to be super important. It's the ability to be able to um, take something that AI gives you and evaluate it for correctness, right? Were the
Absolutely.
sources correct? Would you have looked for a different source? Would you ask it to pull from a different source? Like, what does that interaction look like?
Absolutely. And I think as much as there's probably going to be a lot of ho nos in here when I say this, I
Yeah.
actually think it's our responsibility as educators to become what I've heard called a cognitive coach. We need to learn to create prompts that don't encourage our students to use it unethically, but to encourage them to make it look at two sides of an event and then
Yeah.
have their own analysis of those two sides or those kind of things. But we're going to have to get smarter. And by
Yeah.
saying no to AI, we're not getting smarter. We
Yeah.
have to say yes and develop ourselves and be proactive about it, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I see that Carly Buffa wrote in here that she provides Grammarly, that you provide Grammarly to all students. If I did not have Grammarly, my writing would be atrocious, right? I've improved over the years. English isn't my first language, and sometimes I get stumped up with like grammar. And so having a tool like Grammarly really helps, especially if you have students whose their first language is not English.
And as we
So
open up our doors internationally, I think that's just one more big consideration, Myra, that you pointed out that we have to be on top of things here.
yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it helps. It can help students even who are English speaking, autistic, with language expression challenges. I think that it can help and it can actually broaden opportunities for other people. Like AI has generative AI. So when we talk about AI, we're talking about generative AI. Generative AI has democratized AI for the masses. And so we just need to figure out how do we integrate it in a way where students can learn the skills they need to be successful in a job. A student doesn't need to memorize, and I'm gonna catch some hate for this. A student doesn't need to know all the historical facts to work in a job, right? A student doesn't need to know what the square root of 10,032 is. They need to be able to find the answer. They need to be able to go out and fish for the answer, and then they need to be able to fact check it, right? So fact check, and we have seen this over the past like 12 years. Fact checking has become an integral part of our society. So I'm gonna leave it there.
No, I love it. I love it. And I think it is important. We're at this space right now where we either need to jump in and be willing to swim
Hmm.
or not have prepared students. And,
Yeah.
and so I think it's our professional obligation to be willing to hear both sides of the AI argument for that matter. I know I dedicated my year to learning AI and it's been fascinating and I love it. And I think it offers a lot of opportunities. Dan, do you
Yeah.
see any other questions? Myra, this has been fantastic.
Thank you. And I can tell you, I've been in the AI space for 12 years. When I first started, like you needed to have a massive brain to be able to work in AI. Not a massive brain, but like the opportunity and really just focus on like the tech of it, right? Where now you don't need to know the tech of it. You need to be able to figure out like how do we integrate it into society? Because it's like your students when they graduate, their job is going to require them to have AI skills and not AI skills like, build a machine learning model, but like how do you use AI for research? How do you use AI to help improve our processes? How do you use AI to automate? So that's the kind of thing that they need to do.
Oh, absolutely. I was even talking, for those that know me, I live on a ranch. So my husband's constantly fixing tractors or this, that, and the other. And I was looking at future AI that will be available to him that he will be able to use to see inside of an engine where you don't have to tear it all apart necessarily to fix things because AI can provide that. That's amazing, the amount of efficiency and time saving that that would give even people in rural areas doing equipment, work. I just think it's amazing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to leave my LinkedIn here so everyone can connect with me
That'd be
because
great.
I'm all about connecting and, I'm always happy to answer questions. And the best way to get me is always through LinkedIn because my inbox is a black hole.
Absolutely. And Myra, we might reach out to you just for inspiration because we are working currently on getting ready to design a culture of care research center. And you talked about some places you'd love to see
Yeah.
research happen, and I jotted that down. But as you see things that we could help with in this realm, it's going to help us grow. So I would, love for us to continue that collaboration and helping fill the gap.
Yeah, definitely. I believe every state should have an AI advisory center that is located in a university.
That's
We did
great.
have we had a question pop up in the Q&A section. Do you see ethical issues for advice counseling that individuals may seek through AI tools? How do you see this as conflict in mental health / the medical world?
So AI is interesting, right? So I would say you have to be careful when seeking counseling, but AI has become a companion. So there was a research done with, I think it was some Alzheimer's patients, older patients, where they were given an AI kind of buddy, and it helped. They saw an improvement in the overall quality of everyday life for the people that were involved, right? Because it gave them the ability to communicate more openly. But I think if seeking mental health advice from AI, I don't recommend it, right? But I do recommend looking into AI companions, and just how it's being used in treatment is super interesting.
I'd like to thank all the attendees for their engagement today. I definitely want to thank Myra again for being here with us. So many great things and so many things for us to continue to develop who we are, which is what this summit is about. And it's about opening our eyes to things that we need to do in our particular at UAGC to open up people's, eyes about helping our students, but in our other organizations that are attending on how they can use AI to help their employees and their customers as well. So, and thank you, Dan, for facilitating with me. And again, we posted in the chat for our award as well as back to the website for the next sessions that'll be starting probably in the next 3 to 4 minutes. We hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And thank you again, Myra. It was such a pleasure.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I hope you have a great rest of the summit. Thank you so much.